Hello and welcome to Stampscaping 101. We're going to work on another mirror card here. Just done one recently and really enjoy the format of this card and kind of what it can bring to the end result from a three-dimensional aspect without having to really do anything in terms of three-dimensional constructions, just utilizing the silver foil as a reflective area to the main scene situated on the top part of the inner side of a card. Okay, I wanted to work it with some deciduous foliage on this piece. I don't remember if I've done that before, and I thought that could be really dramatic in terms of just the colors, some of the contrasts, and what we can do with the pens in terms of kind of representative floating foliage possibly in the water. I didn't know how this would turn out or how it would look, but I don't know, that's why we do these scenes and kind of experiments. Okay, now I'm adding a lot of different colors to this Quaking Aspen large stamp. And I got it a little bit darker here than I thought. When you do this degree of blending of all these different dye-based colors, you never really know exactly how it's going to come out. Just in terms of what becomes the dominant color on the rubber. Sometimes you're working with certain pens that are drier than others, so it's not applying as much of that ink to the surface as it would if it were, you know, dry, or I don't know, vice versa. And you can see on my second impression here, it's a much lighter version of the Quaking Aspen stamp, and that was kind of more along the lines of what I was going for. But that being said, you really don't have to be perfect with this if you utilize the 3mm paint pens that I'm using with the Quaking Aspen stamps now. Kind of all the deciduous trees, I just find that the use of the acrylic paint pens are just so perfect for that type of foliage these days. I've longed for the day when I can apply somewhat opaque marks to my imagery. In the past, we've always been working with things like dye-based inks. There's alcohol inks. They're all transparent, but acrylic paint is a little bit more opaque, so you can add light into darker, okay? So on those trees, I'm going to add a lot of yellow to that. Okay, so someone was asking me if you can do this type of mirror card with any type of foil. And I was just showing them in this live stream that, you know, you might be able to try certain things, but like an orange foil or something like that, it won't be quite as reflective as something like this silver, right? The silver is as close to a mirror that I know of in the stamping world that we can use for that. So you can see this particular silver foil is really quite reflective, and I have a link for all these, or a lot of the materials that I use in all of my videos in the description section. I have looked at and have even ordered other types of silver foil before, and some of them are a little bit more like a brushed aluminum, so they're not mirror-like. Okay, now they might be great for other types of applications, but if you're going for a really reflective quality to that, I don't know, I wouldn't say it's hit or miss. You can go off the photographs that are in the item descriptions and whatnot. I don't know. I bought mine because it was the cheapest stuff around for the number of sheets you get. This one was a 60 pack. Okay, so I'm adding some blue up into the sky here. I was going to go fairly minimal, but I do end up going into my medium tones a little bit more. I thought I would just apply a very light value to that sky with this Memento summer sky right there. But when I looked at it right there, I thought, we can use a little bit more contrast. So what you do is you just work incrementally darker if you have the incrementally darker colors. Okay, it looks like I'm going with a gray here. I was thinking, I might not go too dark, but maybe the touch of gray might enhance the kind of the colors, the intensity of the colors with some additional kind of dull and darker tones in the sky. And you can kind of play around with a little bit of a vignette type of effect here. And I am adding that gray down into the rock as well. So everything kind of what I'm doing here, for the most part, I'm trying to create, well, I'm doing a couple things because this is a foil card. So just in this main scene itself, I'm making things a little bit darker because, the star of the scene is color. And it's that fall type of, golden, deciduous, kind of shimmery color, reflective of kind of backlit colored leaves, okay? So going a little bit darker like that, it makes the leaves stand out maybe a little bit lighter in contrast. The blue's kind of contrasting against that as well, that orange and the eventual yellow too. But I don't know, I just keep playing around with it. I don't have set plans for every little aspect that goes into making a card. There's a lot of it that you really can't predict at times, unless you can see it. I don't visualize everything ahead of time. I kind of just let things happen. No, I have an idea. I knew I was going to do aspen trees reflecting in this foil, but, a large percentage of it, I don't know, I'm just kind of making up as I go. Like right here, I'm adding a little bit of a Caribbean blue to that sky, kind of warming up the sky a little bit. Now, if you're doing a kind of a mirrored, reflective type of composition like this, it's a good idea to hold it up in that card format periodically, just so you can see what it's looking like down there, because a big part of this mirror card end result is how the top scenes are going to look reflected below. So sometimes you have to push contrast a little bit more. See, right here I thought, okay, I'm going to make the base of this rocky ledge here darker, so that when you transition it into the water, I don't know, I thought it would make a nicer transition. See, like that, it kind of gives it a little bit more visual weight by anchoring the that rock down. I thought the transition into the water looked a little bit better, having it a little bit darker. Okay, now I'm just coloring my scenes with this wadded up paper towel, okay? That's not the best applicator for detailed areas, but you have your pens, either alcohol or dye-based pens, something like that, can get in these details a lot better. So I'm just kind of going along and I'm kind of darkening up some of those shadow areas, some of the kind of the indentations in that rocky surface, and I'm reiterating it with just kind of light shades of pen. Now I'm kind of putting this green on there, and then I'm blending it back in a little bit. I don't know, it might be reflective of moss or lichen or something like that. Just kind of giving it a little bit of life by introducing a warm touch into an otherwise neutral to cool surface. So you can have a little bit of both. You can play around with temperature ranges within your spaces. Okay, now I'm adding black down like that over the top of it. It's kind of mellowing out that rock. See, I'm taking a look at it right here, seeing how that rock looks. I'm looking at the top scene, but I'm really looking a lot at the bottom scene when it comes to the mirror type of thing. Which seems strange, you work on the main scene a lot, but for me, my eye goes right to that reflection. Okay, so I'm working with these 3mm paint pens now, and I'm working with a range of colors that are going to be kind of a representative of that type of tree. And with dye-based inks, as you noticed, I worked it from light colors to incrementally darker colors, okay? So we're working from light to dark with transparent colors. With opaque colors, for me, I tend to work from dark to light because I can put a yellow over the top of an orange and it will, will read as yellow, okay? If you did that with dye-based inks, just the darkest color is going to win out and it's going to be the most dominant, okay? Because they're see-through. So right down here you can see I'm putting a few like fallen leaves or something like that down there. You can introduce some of that color down onto your surfaces. I'll end up doing some of that on my water as well. Okay, now I talked about opacity, but as I'm doing this with this yellow, it stands out pretty good right there, right? But I am using this water-based acrylic ink over water-based acrylic ink marks, so I'm putting yellow over orange, and it really stands out when it's wet like this, but as it dries, it gets a little bit more transparent, or it moves towards transparency. I mean, it's going to be a translucent application, but when they dry, they're going to get darker, okay? So you can add more layers, but on this scene, what I do is I incorporate embossing into the process. So it kind of seals everything off, and then I hit it with another layer of yellow so that it doesn't mix with the applications underneath, the sub-applications of paint. So you kind of have to work it, kind of both ways, but it's not a lost cause, okay? Now, the more you build up, the more three-dimensional and shimmery these leaves look, okay? Now, see, sometimes I'm putting on kind of a larger dot like that. I'm kind of clustering them. And just so that it doesn't look so absolutely even, you want kind of pops of more opacity and, I don't know, maybe the volume of color, kind of clusters of light, are what these little dots end up looking like. So look at that reflection area down there. Look how those yellow dots really stand out in that reflective area. So not a mirror, but it's pretty close to it. That silver cardstock works really well, and I'm hoping that it's available for a long time. A lot of times they sell out on that link that I have in the description section. Anytime I post one of these, it seems like they sell out. But it seems to come back into stock within a month's time or something, if not sooner. Sometimes it says available at a certain date, but I've always found that they stock it a little bit faster. These days, I don't know, with the supply chain kind of problems going on right now, but that's what it's been in the past. But hopefully it doesn't go up too much in price, but I still find it's a really good bargain. In terms of silver foil, I've seen it sold for $1 a sheet in 5 packs, 10 packs before. Maybe different brands. I can't imagine it's any better than this one, because I can't imagine it getting any more mirrored, or thick, or just quality in general. Okay, so see, I'm going back in with some additional yellow in here. I haven't embossed it or anything like that yet, but it was just kind of darkening. All right, so I hit it again with a fresh coating of that yellow acrylic paint. This is on glossy cardstock, so it doesn't dry very quickly. So it's perfect for using with embossing powder. I happen to be using it with a clear embossing. I guess if you had a yellow embossing powder, you can do that. I'm kind of wiping off some excess embossing powder on the scene. And what we'll do is we'll seal this in, and those leaves will actually become three-dimensional with little pops of embossing powder. So it's kind of nice, and we're going for this three-dimensional look with the paint pen, right? But now look how dark those additions of color and embossing powder got. So all you do is you just go back over it again. And I think this time this yellow will retain its value without absorbing and merging with the inks that are underneath it. So you don't have to do this again after this point, okay? You're putting it onto a sealed kind of wax surface with that embossing. I don't know what embossing powders are. It seems like wax to me or something. All right, so that's what that looks like right there. Going back in with white. White has white's the lightest of values that you can possibly use. So kind of going into it with that kind of gives it a little bit more shimmer. Okay. All right, so that is it with the paint pens. They're a lot of fun to use. Again, for deciduous trees, I did a scene that was with some pink deciduous trees. I don't know if they were cherry trees or something like that. Whatever trees would be blooming pink. I did a scene with that recently and really had fun in another live stream. This is the white pigment ink, and I'm applying it with a soft cotton ball in kind of a dry brushing type of approach. I have this big area of white in the middle of my scene, so I'm kind of having that same white light envelop my objects a little bit by stamping or applying a little bit in front of the trees. So it looks like this mist is kind of, like I said, kind of encompassing my objects in there. I believe it makes it look softer, it gives it a wider textural range, and it brings light into the foreground because you're saying that mist is being illuminated by that light. So it gives it a more kinesthetic type of feel by adding that in there. Everything before that is, for the most part, it's fairly crisp in terms of crisp impressions and crisp little dots of light. And that little bit of pigment ink, kind of light diffusion, really expands on the, I don't know, I guess the visual interest, the visual range, the variety, the contrasts that are happening in there between dark and light, crisp and soft. I don't know, I guess you can call it near and far too. When you put a little of that mist in the air, you're putting that in front of the tree when it's in front of the, some of the leaves like that. Okay, this is my 0.7 millimeter fine point Artistro paint pen. It comes in a set of so many different colors and whatnot. It's really fantastic. All right, so checking it out. Now this scene, this mirror card, I usually put my subject matter, my focal point, on the top part of the scene, but on this one I'm going to have this fisherman down there. So I was just kind of figuring out where that area of light is being reflected down on my mirrored surface, okay? And that's where I want to put that little character. My fingers get very smudgy when doing any scene, but especially when I'm handling so many inks, so you can just wipe it off, it comes right off. Okay, so I'm kind of figuring out where these are going to go here. So like I said, I don't go in with a set idea of how everything is going to be built. I'm just kind of, I don't know, playing it by ear, so to speak. And I'm thinking about what I like to do on this bottom card is fairly minimal, okay? I don't do a lot down there. A lot of times I just stamp out dark imagery to contrast against the background. But on this one, I did consider maybe doing some lighter deciduous foliage in the same color scheme as the aspens in the back. But I thought, that might take a little bit of time. So, but see that right there? See how it kind of frames, the darker images kind of frame off that background a little bit more. I decided to go with one more there. Because I'm kind of, one of the things I'm also doing in this is I'm kind of creating a framing device with these perimeter foreground leaves, okay? To frame off my main subject matter, which is going to be this fisherman, okay? Be careful when stamping on foil, especially with pigment inks. Might be different with StazOn. I think StazOn would work really well on the foils too. One thing about StazOn, when you stamp it on there, you are set with that image. With these ones, with the Brilliance inks, I can wipe those right off still, even after you stamped them for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or whatever. It'll come right off if need be. But so you heat set and spray seal to seal it in. Okay, adding a few more textures down in that water. This is the Tiny Rocks small stamp. By the way, that was the wading fisherman there in the water. See that little texture stamp? I stamp it out in its full strength, but I also do it in lighter versions to create a little bit more depth. So the higher up in that lower composition, foil composition, it might be the third or fourth impression with those tiny rocks. So it's stamping out very gray and light, okay? All right, so I'm wadding up a paper towel to frame off the bottom part a little bit, smashing that ink into the surface of this cotton ball so that it's not all I don't frayed, I guess, you know, and becoming loose. You kind of have to smash it down a little bit. Heat setting the Brilliance inks, okay? Brilliance inks dry very quickly when heat set. Okay, it doesn't affix it to the foil. I mean, it's not fragile, super fragile or anything. I could touch that and it's not going to come off on my finger, but if I rub it, it will come off. So again, all you do is you spray seal the bottom portion of your card when complete, okay? So see that right there? See how that frames that off, and see how those tiny rocks provide a nice little surface down there. Okay, so I'm going in with my paint pen again, I think, unless I kind of figured out, you know, I wanted to do something else here. I'm looking at the smaller paint pens. I was thinking, should I use that one or should I use the larger one? Let's see, I can't even remember. I think I figured the small one was too small. Okay, so I'm adding in these little leaves. It's supposed to be little yellow leaves floating in the water. Like that. See how they kind of stand out? Looks like they're floating on the surface because of that reflective nature, but then you have these little dots on the surface, and it really gives it that floating, I don't know, kind of illusion. Now, I love text coupled with imagery, and especially with cards, but if there's a better application or a cooler application of letter forms in any kind of cards construction than a mirror card like this, I don't know of it. Because to me, when you do this white on the silver like this with a reflected image in that water space, to me it really looks like these letters, these words are floating on the surface, and I love that illusion. Okay, so a nice even and kind of prolonged impression there to allow that ink to transfer to the surface. Okay, it's even more important than those black images in there. You always want text to read very well. So see, I stamped that autumn leaves stamp in the dark area up there, okay? If I stamped it in an area that's reflecting too much light, when mirrored like that, it won't stand out. So if you're doing white in there, I guess you can do a dark if it's against, you know, a dark against a light area too. So you see that autumn leaves is kind of right in that shadow area of the rock, all right? And there's those little leaves kind of floating underneath the tree. Doesn't that look like they're really floating on kind of a water surface like that? It just makes such a fun construction. And again, this is a way to go in, and this is a very three-dimensional looking piece to me. But you don't have to do any three-dimensional applications. All you have to do is are these two flat pieces right here, and just working in conjunction with one another, it creates that very, very, I don't know, kind of a three-dimensional look, illusion of, going on there. Pre-folded card, adhering them together or whatnot, merging them like that. And there you have it. There is the, I'm showing how to spray seal your piece. Don't spray seal the middle of the most reflective area of the card. So you only want to spray seal a little bit those images that you stamped in there with the Brilliance ink. So the autumn leaves and those leaves around on the base perimeter. You don't have to spray seal the paint pen dots. The paint pen dots stick to everything. You can use them on glass and they'll stick. But the Brilliance ink impressions, yeah. Adding in some final little touches here with some additional white ink, okay, because it dries a little bit darker, and more transparent than what it looks like. So just put another layer in there and you're good to go. Okay. So anyways, I hope you like the card and kind of the entire look and idea of the mirror card. And thanks so much for watching.